In the previous two episodes we saw covers going all out, overloaded with detail where you could keep finding new things. Today we're going minimal. These covers use restraint as their superpower. Just a few carefully chosen elements doing all the heavy lifting. Today's episode: Reid Miles using jazz typography and a couple of colors to define an entire genre of jazz. Saville turning scientific data into iconic minimalism for Joy Division, and then hiding secret messages in flower paintings for New Order. Farrow making Pet Shop Boys' most distinctive covers, the stripped-down Behaviour and the Lego Brick Vary. And for our spotlight, Coldplay literally slashing white paint across a romantic masterpiece for Viva la Vida. Welcome to the Less is More school. First up, Reid Miles. The designer who created jazz's most iconic visual language wasn't even a jazz fan. Reid Miles designed over 500 Blue Note album covers between 1955 and 1967. And he preferred classical music. He famously gave away or sold most of the records he received. And here is how it worked. He'd work on a couple of album covers on his Saturday off from Esquire magazine. And instead of listening to the music, because remember he doesn't even like jazz, he'd rely on the producer's descriptions of the recording sessions. The producer would tell him about the vibe, the energy, and Miles would translate that into visuals without hearing a single note. But let's talk about what made those Blue Note covers so revolutionary. Working with Francis Wolff's photographs, Miles created designs limited to 2 or 3 colors. This was originally a cost-saving measure. Blue Note didn't have huge budgets. But it became his aesthetic signature. Take Freddie Hubbard's halftones, perfect example of his approach. You've got 9 vertical black bars with Hubbard's red-tinted photo breaking the pattern. Black, red and white. But the visual impact is massive. Miles treated typography as visual architecture. The letters weren't just telling you the album name. They became the design itself through weight, size and placement. He even collaborated with Andy Warhol on several covers, including The Congregation by Johnny Griffin. And Miles, who also worked extensively in advertising, had this great observation. He noted that album covers were not so restrictive as advertising. They allowed him to push typography into completely new territory during what he called the medium's renaissance period. His minimalist Blue Note style influenced graphic design way beyond the genre. It established this visual language that designers still reference today. And now let's talk about Saville, one of the key figures who transformed how music looks. It's 1978. Saville is 22 years old and he co-founds Factory Records. And they give him something nobody gets in the design world: total creative freedom. Other designers stuck with marketing briefs, deadlines and people breathing down their necks, but not Saville. Factory gives him complete control, never asks for approval. This insane arrangement leads to him becoming legendary for missing deadlines. They actually make fun of this in 24-Hour Party People, the 2002 cult film about the label's chaotic history. Anyways, he's producing some of the most influential album artwork of the 20th century. And he's not just doing music. The guy's designing for Yohji Yamamoto and Christian Dior. He becomes creative director for the entire city of Manchester in 2004. Basically, they asked him to help reimagine the city's cultural identity. He even designs England's 2010 World Cup football shirt. But let's get back to the album covers. One of his most famous is Unknown Pleasures for Joy Division, released in 1979. Martin Hannett's producing and he's going absolutely mental with the sound. He's recording drums in complete isolation. He's smashing bottles for percussion. He's literally recording the studio lift going up and down and using it in the mix. The guy is turning the entire building into an instrument. That's the sound of post-punk being invented. The cover has the best origin story. So Bernard Sumners got this day job at Cosgrove Hall Animation Studios. But he can't sleep, complete insomniac, because he's up all night in his flat building synthesizers. During his lunch breaks, he's at Manchester Central Library digging through the science section. And that's where he finds it, this visualization of radio pulses from CP 1919. The first pulsar ever discovered. This pulsar was detected by Cambridge astrophysicist Jocelyn Bell Burnell in 1967, and they nicknamed it LGM-1, which means Little Green Man, because its pulse was so regular every 1.337 seconds. They thought it might be aliens broadcasting. And the actual image was created by the radio astronomer Harold D. Kraft Jr. at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. And Kraft programmed the data to look like you were looking up a hillside, just because he thought it looked cool. So Saville gets this image and he inverted it. He calls it an enigmatic black thing. He leaves off the band's name and the album title entirely, just the pulsar on the cover. And the result is one of the most recognizable covers in music history. An icon that broke free from the album itself ages ago. It shows up on shorts and posters, so familiar now it's become a symbol beyond the band. Fast forward to 1983. Ian Curtis is gone, suicide in May 1980, and the remaining members of Joy Division regroup as New Order. Their second album, Power, Corruption and Lies, is complete transformation. They are fusing post-punk with electronic dance music in ways nobody's done before. So Saville's initial idea for the cover is to find some Machiavellian portrait, some infamous Renaissance figure to match the album title. He's wandering around London's National Gallery and he picks up this postcard, Henri Fontaine-Latour's painting of roses from 1890. And that's when it hits him. Florals for the music album. Groundbreaking. He realizes flowers suggested the means by which power, corruption and lies infiltrate our lives. They are seductive, beautiful on surface, drawing you in, but they are already dying. Just like how corruption works. Plus, Saville creates this revolutionary color-coded alphabet system. 28 sections, each one a letter of the alphabet, a number or a space. So those colored blocks on the album spell Fact 75. Factory Records catalog number. And Saville explained it perfectly. The color alphabet came from the fact that he understood the floppy disk contained coded information. And he wanted to use the same principle in the cover design. And that's Peter Saville for you. Never just a cover, always a concept. And now let's talk about Mark Farrow and his work for Pet Shop Boys. Mark Farrow's real education came from working in a record shop. Every Saturday, Farrow's working at the discount record shop in Manchester's underground market. And he's not just selling records, he's at the absolute epicenter of Manchester's punk and post-punk explosion. The shop becomes a hub with Tony Wilson, Peter Saville, Malcolm Garrett and all the bands who'll define Manchester's sound constantly passing through. And that's how it happens. The Stockholm Monsters are shopping for records. They get talking and they ask him to design their 1982 factory record single Fairy Tales. And boom, career launched. Right place, right time, right record shop. Through the 80s, Farrow's going wild, creating experimental covers and posters for Factory Records and the Hacienda nightclub. He's right at the forefront of everything happening in music design. His approach is minimal and attention to detail is obsessive. And this catches the attention of Pet Shop Boys. That starts a creative partnership that's still going, 4 decades later. But he's not just doing album covers. He's behind Oliver Payton's restaurant branding, collaborates with SCP Furniture and the Science Museum, and even designs the graphics for a racing yacht. In 2004, Creative Review does a peer poll and designers vote him the most important graphic designer working today. Then in 2009 he gets the Royal Designer for Industry Honor from the Royal Society of Arts. So this man is a certified legend. But let's dive into his Pet Shop Boys work. After 3 albums where the productions kept getting bigger and more elaborate, they take a more introspective turn. In Munich, they team up with Harald Faltenmeyer, swap digital scenes for vintage analog gear, and the sound becomes warmer and more organic. The whole album explores memory, mortality, and the passage of time. For the cover, Mark Farrow is working with photographer Eric Watson, and they create this grid. 4 photographs floating in a massive white space. You've got Neil and Chris together holding roses, Neil's face alone, the back of Chris' head, and then an empty chair with a hat and roses on the floor. The concept starts with the 1951 Richard Avedon photograph of Judy Garland. Tennant sees it in Liza Minnelli's New York apartment while he's producing her Results album. And maybe the layout goes way deeper than just inspiration. Whether Farrow did this intentionally or not, nobody knows, but the layout maps onto the Johari window. It's a psychological model about self-knowledge. 4 quadrants showing what we reveal, what we hide, and what we don't know about ourselves. Again, I'm not sure whether or not Farrow meant it that way, but for me the 4 images play like a study in presence and absence. This is 1990, remember. The AIDS crisis is devastating everyone. And the Being Boring track has that line that just gets me every time. All the people I was kissing, some are here and some are missing in the 1990s. So these 4 photos in massive white space might tell you everything about grief and memory. Then Very in 1993. Tennant and Lowe are bored with a little booklet behind transparent plastic. They want the package itself to be the statement. So Farrow teams up with Daniel Whale from Pentagram Design, and they create what becomes one of the most iconic CD packages ever made. Whale wants the CD to escape the photograph archetype. He wants to create a recognizable object in its own right. So they make this bright orange polystyrene case that's covered in raised circular studs. Fans immediately call it the Lego case, though Whale points out Lego never actually made bricks in that exact orange. The raised studs are not just decoration, they actually help hold CD in place. And they ship the early copies with no graphics at all, just shrink-wrapped orange plastic. So you walk into a record shop, see this strange studded block, and know it's the new Pet Shop Boys. And get this, the Museum of Modern Art puts this CD case in their 1995 exhibition Mutant Materials in Contemporary Design. It showcases over 200 objects showing innovative uses of materials. And there is the Pet Shop Boys CD sitting next to cutting-edge industrial design. And now time for our spotlight, Coldplay's Viva la Vida. So this is Coldplay's 4th studio album, and they are going full art rock statement. The title track becomes their first #1 in both the UK and the US. The album sells over 10 million copies and wins a Grammy. And the cover is something else. They take Eugène Delacroix's famous 1830 painting, Liberty Leading the People. It shows revolutionaries storming a barricade during the French July Revolution. Lady Liberty holding the flag high with bodies scattered around her. And Coldplay simply adds Viva la Vida in white paint right across it. They are working with the design duo Tappin Gofton, Mark Tappin and Simon Gofton, who did their X and Y artwork. And they spent months developing this concept. So they picked this painting that's all about revolution and upheaval, which fits perfectly. The whole album is dealing with life, death and war. And here is the painting, showing freedom and violence all mixed together. And here is a key fact. Chris Martin gets the Viva la Vida title from Frida Kahlo. The Mexican artist painted her final painting just 8 days before she died in 1954. It was a still life of watermelons with Viva la Vida written right on the red flesh. Long live life. Kahlo's been through unimaginable physical suffering her entire life. And her final statement to the world is this defiant celebration: long live life. And Martin's completely moved by this. For me, this exact design move is minimalism, not because there is less stuff, but because the intervention is so simple. One gesture that creates this entire dialogue between revolution and evolution, death and life. The minimalist move isn't about having nothing. It's about doing the least to say the most. In today's look at minimalism, we also brushed up against something new for this series – long-term collaborations between musicians and designers. Mark Farrow and Pet Shop Boys have been working together for decades, though I only showed you 2 covers here. And even in our spotlight, Coldplay's Viva La Vida came from Tapping and Gofton. They are collaborators on several albums. So we'll see more of these partnerships in the next episode. See you there!